Hello everybody, today we will add more animations to the focus arrow. We will do these animations with GeometryEffect and we will modify the transforms rotation to display different types of animations. Let's start by creating one of the new animations. We will begin with the spinning animation. The animations in this app are being done with GeometryEffect. So this is a struct that changes the view's transform, and that's what we animate in SwiftUI. A very helpful hack that we have been doing here is declaring a private variable %, and then GeometryEffect has this variable animatable data. Then we can use the % variable in the getter and setter, and now we have a way of tracking the progress of the animation. How do we do this? Because in the init, we are passing an isOn variable. It's a boolean. If it is on, we set the % to 1 or 100%. And if it is off, we set it to 0. SwiftUI is the one that's going to be changing this. And with the animatable data is how we know in what part of the animation we are. So now we have from 0 to 100% of the animation, and we can just divide the animation into different stages using this % variable. The only thing that we're going to do here to animate is pass in a projection transform with a CGFI transform in the initializer. So we will have the rotation angle. This is in radians. We want this to do a full rotation, so it's going to be 2 pi times the %. And since we want to see this in the app, let's go to our focus area modifier. Let's add another case for our arrow animation, rotating. And we'll add another if modifier here, where if the arrow animation is rotating, we add the spinning animation as a modifier to the view. Let's add this animation to the top right button, and let's see how this works. So we go to the demo view, the top right, and notice what's happening. It is spinning, but it is spinning from the origin, and that's because this transform, this effect, applies the transform from the anchor point 0.0. We need to do some changes in the transform so that the effect takes place from the center of the view, where we want the spinning to happen. We don't want the arrow to be spinning the entire span of the animation, so let's get this variable real %, since for some part of the animation, let's say 20% of the animation, we want the arrow to be still. So the real % will be % minus 0.1 over 0.8. Why? Because the first part of the animation, so the first 10%, we will just return the identity, and the last 10%, so that is when % is bigger than 0.9, we will also return the identity. So now the percentage changes. Now let's fix the part of the anchor point of the animation. So how do we fix this? With transforms. So first we'll create a CGFI transform with translation, and the translation is negative half of the width and negative half of the height. Then to that transform, we concatenate the rotation transform that we were applying before. And then we apply another translation transform, undoing the first translation that we did with the negative half of the width and negative half of the height, this time with a positive value. We will create another projection transform with the anchor point transform and concatenate it to our first projection transform. Let's try this once more. Step once again on the top right, and now we have our spinning animation. Now we don't want it to rotate clockwise, we want it counterclockwise, so we just make the rotation angle negative. Step again. Okay, and that's the spinning animation we want. Let's go now for our second animation, one that rotates and spins. So remember the error that we had at the beginning where the arrow wasn't spinning, it was rotating around the origin? Well, now we want that. So we want the arrow to be rotating and spinning at the same time. Luckily, we already have our spinning animation. Let's now produce the unwanted effect that we had at the beginning. So first, let's change the amount of times we're going to have the rotation. Let's move it to 4 pi. So that's 2 full spins. And let's move the rotation transform to its own variable, since we're going to use it twice. One to do the spinning animation. This is the one that we're doing between the two translation transforms. And then after doing the spinning animation, that remember is the concatenation between the two first projection transform, we're going to add a third one with just the rotation, which is what produced the undesired behavior the first time. Let's add this behavior to the top left button and try it out. Step on the top left one, and there we have it. The arrow is spinning and rotating. One thing we don't want to change though is we want it to spin just one. We want the spinning to be different than the rotation. We want the rotation to just be one lap, whereas the rotation, well, it's indifferent. So for that, we need to create two transforms, one for rotating and one for spinning. The one for rotating is just going to be 2 pi, the one for spinning 4 pi. Okay, I like that. That's a bit like that. Now for our third animation, we will do it like a wheel type kind of animation. So the arrow is going to spin and move horizontally back and forth. So we already have the spinning animation. We don't need to mess with any of that. Now we just need the back and forth transform. So we create a translation transform, and here we also use the percent to look at which stage of the animation we are on. So if we are on the first half, that is if percent is less than 50%, then we create a translation to move this arrow to the right. On the second part of the animation, we just move it the same distance to the left, so it's back on place. And here we concatenate translation transform to the spinning transform. We added it to the bottom left. Let's try it. Okay, we're getting the kind of what we wanted with the translation, but you can see that the arrow is kind of skipping. There must be something wrong with the formula that I'm using for the translation. Ah, yes, the percent here needs to be relative to that stage. So I need to divide by 0.5, since, for example, for the first stage, the percent is going from 0 to 0.5, so it won't actually get to the 100% of half of the width. Now let's try again. It should work. So on the bottom left, and there we have our real animation. No jumping, nothing looked finicky, the animation is complete. And that was all. As you can see, mixing the translation and rotation, CG-affine transforms is very powerful, and you can create some very cool animations. GeometryEffect comes in very handy when wanting to control the animation and divide it by stages, as you can see here where we created 3 different animations in less than 10 minutes. Hope you liked this video. Bye!